Ever wondered why porn can feel addictive or why it changes what you find arousing over time? The answer lies deep within your brain's neurochemistry. Imagine if every time you watched, your brain was being rewired, altering your sense of pleasure, desire, and even how you experience intimacy in real life. See, your brain is wired to seek pleasure and reward. It's how we've survived as a species, driven by these primal urges to eat, socialize, and reproduce. But what happens when we introduce something like porn into the equation? Watching porn isn't just a passive act. It actively rewires your brain, altering the way you experience pleasure, desire, and even real-world intimacy. It hijacks these ancient neural pathways, flooding your system with dopamine, the feel-good neurochemical, at levels far beyond what's natural. Let's dive into the neuroscience of porn consumption and explore how it impacts your brain's reward system, potentially leading to addiction and affecting your ability to experience pleasure in healthy ways. At the core of any pleasurable activity, eating, socializing, or sex, is the brain's reward system. A network of structures that reinforces behaviors essential for survival. This system is finely tuned to ensure we repeat actions crucial for our well-being and the continuation of our species. When we engage in these activities, a neurotransmitter called dopamine is released in the brain, creating a sense of pleasure and satisfaction. This feeling is a powerful motivator, encouraging us to repeat these behaviors. Now, let's talk about the role of the mesolimbic pathway, a key player in the brain's reward system. It's like the brain's superhighway for dopamine, connecting the ventral tegmental area, which produces dopamine, to the nucleus accumbens, a region associated with motivation and reward. When activated, this pathway tells us, "That felt good, let's do it again." Here's where things get interesting with porn. Watching porn provides a shortcut, a super highway to dopamine release, bypassing the natural triggers of human interaction and intimacy. The sheer novelty, variety, and intensity of the visual stimuli in porn can trigger a surge of dopamine in the brain, far exceeding what you'd experience in typical sexual encounters. This dopamine rush creates a powerful sense of pleasure, but here's the catch. Your brain interprets this surge as a signal that something incredibly important for survival is happening. Imagine your brain is like a finely tuned car engine. Normally it gets a steady fuel supply from everyday pleasures. But when you watch porn, it's like dumping premium fuel that makes the engine rev wildly, even if it's not built for that kind of rush. Remember, our brains evolved in a time when resources were scarce and survival was the name of the game. So the brain thinks, wow, this must be really important if I'm getting this much dopamine. Let's do it again and again and again. This is where the potential for addiction comes in. With repeated exposure to porn, the brain adapts to these high levels of dopamine. It's like turning up the volume on your headphones. Eventually, you need to keep increasing the volume to get the same effect. Have you ever felt that overwhelming rush of excitement that leaves you wanting more, like your brain can't get enough? Research shows that this overstimulation can lead to a reward overload, where your brain's pleasure circuits become desensitized over time. Let's delve deeper into how porn can hijack the brain's reward system and lead to what's known as a tolerance effect. With repeated exposure to porn, your brain becomes accustomed to these artificially high levels of dopamine. Think of it like a seesaw. As dopamine goes up, sensitivity in the reward system goes down. This means you need more and more stimulation to achieve the same level of pleasure you once experienced. This adaptation is driven by changes in dopamine receptors, the brain cells receiving points for this feel-good neurochemical. With repeated and excessive dopamine surges, the brain tries to regulate itself by reducing the number of these receptors or making them less sensitive. It's like turning down the volume on your headphones because the music is too loud. As a result of this down-regulation, activities that used to bring you pleasure, like spending time with loved ones, engaging in hobbies, or even having sex in real life, may start to feel dull and unsatisfying. This is because your brain has become accustomed to the supernormal stimuli of porn, and normal, everyday pleasures just can't compete with the dopamine rush it provides. This leads to a phenomenon known as the escalation effect. As your tolerance builds, you may find yourself seeking out more extreme or novel forms of pornography to achieve the same level of arousal and satisfaction. You might seek out different genres, more explicit content, or even multiple videos at once. This cycle of desensitization and escalation can be a slippery slope leading to a state of addiction where you feel compelled to consume more and more porn, even if you don't want to or if it's having negative consequences in your life. Think of it like turning up the volume on a radio. Initially, everything sounds great, but eventually, you need to crank it up higher to hear the same song clearly. That's your brain demanding louder, more extreme stimuli to hit the same note of pleasure. Could your craving for more explicit content actually be a sign that your brain is losing its sensitivity to natural rewards? Studies suggest that this tolerance can mimic addiction, making it extremely challenging to switch back to normal, everyday sources of pleasure. It's important to remember that addiction is not about morality or willpower. It's about changes in the brain that drive compulsive behaviors. But it's not just about the dopamine rush. Porn consumption also affects other neurochemicals and hormones related to pleasure, reward, and bonding, further contributing to its addictive potential. Now, let's explore how repeated exposure to porn can lead to actual structural changes in the brain, particularly in regions associated with reward, motivation, and decision-making. What if your brain's ability to enjoy simple pleasures like a good meal or a meaningful conversation was being silently eroded? Research in the field of neuroplasticity has shown that our brains are incredibly adaptable. Every experience, every thought, every action shapes the intricate connections within our brains. Imagine your brain as a complex city. Porn consumption is like a constant, unrelenting traffic jam that gradually wears down the roads and infrastructure, making it harder for your brain to function smoothly and efficiently. One area of the brain that undergoes changes with excessive porn consumption is the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain responsible for executive functions like planning, decision-making, and impulse control. Studies have shown that individuals struggling with compulsive porn use may have reduced gray matter volume in the prefrontal cortex, which can impair their ability to regulate their impulses and make rational decisions, especially when it comes to porn consumption. Think of it this way. Pornography consumption can create a kind of tunnel vision, where your brain prioritizes the immediate reward of viewing porn over other important aspects of your life. This can lead to neglecting responsibilities, withdrawing from social connections, or even experiencing difficulties in your relationships. Another area affected is the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure crucial for memory formation and spatial navigation. The hippocampus plays a vital role in associating memories with emotions and places, creating a rich tapestry of experiences that shapes our behavior. Studies suggest that excessive porn consumption may be associated with changes in the hippocampus, potentially impacting memory recall and emotional regulation. Moreover, porn consumption can affect the amygdala, the brain's alarm center responsible for processing emotions, particularly fear and anxiety. Repeated exposure to highly stimulating content can put the amygdala into overdrive, leading to increased anxiety and stress, especially in situations related to sex or intimacy in real life. It can create unrealistic expectations about sex and relationships, leading to dissatisfaction with real-life intimacy. Have you ever felt a disconnect between the fantasy and reality of intimacy? Could your emotional state be linked to what you watch? Imagine a painter who spends all day mixing only the brightest, most saturated colors. Over time, everything else begins to look dull and lifeless. That's what happens to your emotional palette when your brain is overloaded with the hyperstimulation of porn. It skews your perception of what's normal or satisfying. These structural and functional changes in the brain highlight the profound impact of porn consumption on our neurobiology. It's not merely about watching videos, it's about altering the very pathways that shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. In some cases, heavy porn users report issues like porn-induced erectile dysfunction, where real-life intimacy no longer triggers the same arousal. Proof that these structural changes have real-world consequences. The question is, can you reverse its effects? Do you believe that with the right approach, you can restore your brain's natural ability to enjoy life's simpler pleasures? In short, yes. Think of your brain as a garden. If you keep watering it with an excessive chemical fertilizer, porn, the natural soil, your normal reward system, gets degraded. But if you stop and nurture it with natural growth methods, it can eventually regenerate its fertility. The brain's ability to adapt and recover, known as neuroplasticity, allows it to rewire itself when overstimulated pathways, such as those altered by excessive porn consumption, are gradually reduced. Chronic porn use can desensitize dopamine receptors, leading to decreased sensitivity to real-world pleasures. But the good news is that recovery is possible. Reducing or eliminating porn consumption is the first step, allowing dopamine receptors to reset, restoring normal reward system function. During this process, Withdrawal-like symptoms such as mood swings, brain fog, or low motivation may occur, but they are temporary. Mindful stimulation through activities like exercise, meditation, creative hobbies, and social interactions helps restore natural dopamine balance without artificial overstimulation. Improving real-life intimacy is crucial for rebuilding healthy arousal pathways. Engaging in deep emotional connections and fostering physical intimacy with real partners retrains the brain to associate pleasure with genuine experiences rather than digital content. Additionally, it's essential to avoid other instant gratification triggers such as excessive social media use, junk food, or binge-watching videos, as these can also overload the reward system and slow down recovery. Many experts now use biofeedback and neurofeedback as cutting-edge tools to help individuals regain control over their reward systems. Proof that recovery is not only possible but achievable with the right tools. By consistently making these changes, the brain gradually restores its sensitivity to natural rewards, leading to improved focus, emotional well-being, and healthier relationships. The key takeaway? At the end of the day, porn isn't just a source of entertainment. It's a powerful force that rewires your brain, alters your emotions, and even reshapes your reality. Whether it's the thrill of dopamine surges or the dark cycle of tolerance and withdrawal. Understanding this process is the first step toward regaining control. Your brain thrives on real-world intimacy, connection, and balance. Instead of seeking quick fixes of dopamine through hyper-stimulating activities like excessive porn consumption, focus on nurturing your brain with activities that promote genuine connection, pleasure, and well-being. By understanding how porn affects your mind, you can make informed choices and take steps to cultivate a healthier relationship with pleasure. Remember, you have the power to rewire your brain, strengthen your self-control, and create a life filled with meaningful connections and genuine satisfaction. What steps will you take today to ensure that your brain's natural reward system remains healthy and that you enjoy life's true pleasures? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a conversation about reclaiming our natural pleasure. See you next time. Keep watching MedGroww and take care of yourself.